good. Do we have a more? Oh. Nicole, do you guys want to come up? Chase, is anybody? You're all welcome.
Yeah, come on, Chase.
Rachel, you're welcome. Rachel, if you want. Yeah, it's up to you. I'm not pressuring. We all set?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. You want some space? Yeah. Yes, I love this. My name is Sarah Finger. I am the Executive Director and founder of the Wisconsin Alliance for Women's Health. Our vision as an organization is that every woman in Wisconsin, at every age and every stage of life, is able to reach her optimal health, safety, and economic security. I am incredibly excited with that vision, with our organization. I'm excited to be here today with so many other organizations, members of the medical community, patients, and legislators who are dedicated to promoting an inspiring and bold vision for women's healthcare policy that is centered on respect for women and their individual circumstances. During these incredibly challenging times for women's health on the state and federal political levels, we cannot forget that we have a responsibility to articulate a proactive agenda. An agenda that shows that our state can achieve what our state can achieve if we ever decide to get serious about promoting policies that are based on empathy, evidence, and a sense of humility from our elected officials that don't always know what is best. In the past 6 years in Wisconsin, if it's shown us anything, it's shown us that there has to be a better way. We can do better than having politicians who are too busy playing doctor with women's personal health care decisions that they ignore policies that actually improve the health of lives of women and families in our state. Policies like paid family and medical leave. We can do better than the nonstop obsession with repealing and undermining the Affordable Care Act at the expense of achieving solutions that will guarantee everyone in this country has a right to receive health care. And we certainly can do better than regulating women's reproductive health care decisions more than we regulate guns in this country. And there have been some glimmers of hope. It hasn't been all bad news. We're here to build off of one of the bits of recent successes we've received with the recent Whole Women's Health Supreme Court decision, which finally said that the court is going to start looking at abortion restrictions, which are with a more critical eye, and demand that state legislators actually provide evidence, which seems to be long forgotten concept in these debates, but the legislators, these restrictions, that they provide legitimate health benefits if they're going to pass them to women who many of these legislators claim to try and be protecting. We think that it's a pretty good starting point with the Supreme Court decision, but the Respect Women's Act is taking the Supreme Court at its word by basically demanding that our state have reproductive health care policies that are consistent with this standard, which is something that I think most people can believe in when it comes to their own health care. Here to provide some more details about these bills and why they are so important for women and the integrity of health care in our state are the two co-authors and sponsors of this legislation. And I once again want to thank you for your leadership. Did we flip a coin to see who was going first? Oh, all right, Senator Urbanbach.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Sarah, and good morning, everybody. Ideally, we would be here under a better situation with talk about legislation that is passed that is proactive for women's health and actually have become law in Wisconsin. But unfortunately, in Wisconsin and 33 other states since 2011, a couple of hundred pieces of anti-abortion legislation, it's more than that. It's really more anti-women legislation in the area of healthcare have passed in this country, including 7 right here in Wisconsin. And most of these laws that have passed are not based on science or medically accepted best practices. The Respect Women's Act draws attention to the fact that it's the Republicans and their idea of big government have decided that women are incapable of making healthcare decisions on their own and couldn't possibly know what's best for them. By the way, just to note, no other healthcare procedures or medications have been subject to this kind of treatment. This legislation serves as a contrast, actually a vision that we believe reproductive health care can look like when it's free from political interference from the far-right legislators looking to appease a very small number of people here in Wisconsin. And by the way, here in Wisconsin, it's important to note this. You can't bother a person who is hunting. You can't take pictures of them. You can't intimidate them. You cannot harass them. But women trying to access health care and physicians trying to provide that care are subject to harassment, intimidation, and sometimes even violence. Wisconsin women and Wisconsin physicians certainly deserve better. I want to thank Representative Taylor for working with me on this particular issue. I want to thank Sarah and her crew for their being so tenacious on this particular issue. Wisconsin women are very, very capable of making their own decisions when they are presented the facts by their doctor. Legislation that has passed recently here in the state of Wisconsin basically takes away medical-based evidence, takes away facts, and it's Republicans telling doctors what they can and cannot say to women when it comes to trying to make a decision on a healthcare related issue. We can do better than that here in Wisconsin. We should do better than that here in Wisconsin, and certainly Wisconsin women deserve better than that. So thanks.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Chris?
Well, thanks, everyone. Again, thanks to Senator Erpenbach. I always love working on bills with Senator Erpenbach because he just tells it like it is, and I so appreciate that. And Sarah and the Wisconsin Alliance for Women's Health and all these incredible advocates who are here for patients, which is what we're here today about. This is really about patient care, because every woman really should have the right to receive comprehensive reproductive health care services that protects her health, that provides her with medically accurate information, and is delivered in a safe environment, free from intimidation and harassment. Every single woman in this state deserves that. Unfortunately, over the last several decades, and particularly the last 6 years here in Wisconsin, this building, women's health, safety, and access to critical reproductive health care has been dangerously undermined in our state and nationally. Since 2011, 7 laws have been passed by Republican politicians that really put them in the examining room. It really put them in the process and in the position of dictating medical procedures and information forced upon patients. And I can tell you, as a patient who very much struggled to have my second child and went through a lot of heartbreak in that process, I did not need a politician in my doctor's office with me. I needed really good medical care. But today we're here to introduce the Respect Women Act that is going to protect the rights and the needs of every woman in Wisconsin to get quality, evidence-based reproductive health care without political interference. No patient wants politicians dictating the care they're going to get. This set of 3 bills put health care where it really should be, and that is between a woman and her trusted health care provider. It seems so basic. That's what we want here today. The first bill, the Respect Access to Care bill, really enshrines the fundamental right of every woman to make her own decisions about childbearing. That is a fundamental right, and we should respect it here in our laws. And it requires that any restriction to abortion services must be based on medical science. What a concept. It actually must be based on medical science that enhances women's health, and or increases patient safety. So what this bill really does, this particular bill is really codify, Sarah mentioned the recent Supreme Court decision, Whole Women's Health. And so we want that in our law. We want to make sure that that is in our state law. And we certainly want to make sure that restrictions to reproductive health care are grounded in medicine, not in politics. Like this, we have a horrible mandatory ultrasound requirement, and we have a phony script that physicians are mandated to go through with patients. The second bill, the Respect Medical Accuracy bill, creates a right, and I absolutely love this bill, because this is a right of every patient to get medically accurate information from their provider, and it creates a right of the provider and an obligation of the provider to actually give it. To actually give that medically accurate information. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that? The third bill is really about respecting and protecting patient and provider safety by working with law enforcement to come up with really best practices to protect women who are seeking these services. Oftentimes they are intimidated, they are harassed, and so are the providers. So we want to make sure that people are safe in seeking these services. This important package of bills shows what reproductive health care should look like. This is what we want. This is our vision. Even as all these horrible restrictions have been passed the last 6 years, women continue to need access to reproductive health care. And we just had, actually, I'm one of the positive things too besides this case was Planned Parenthood just opened a new health center in Milwaukee this last week. And they did that because the demand is there. Women need access to these services. So this is really about getting back to basics, this bill. It's about taking personal private health care decisions away from the people in this Capitol, away from politicians who are interfering, and putting them back where they belong, between the woman and her health care provider. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As Representative Taylor mentioned, she is a patient. I am a patient. We've gone through our own healthcare needs, and we know as women we have unique healthcare needs. And so there's many of us that can speak to how important this is for patients in Wisconsin. And we are incredibly grateful that the patient-provider partnership is so strong with this legislation. And so we have with us today two individuals, a practicing OBGYN here in Madison and a medical student who will give some remarks about why this is so important for the practice of medicine, for patients' health, and for the patient-provider relationship. So, Amanda, do you want to come on up?
I've been a practicing OBGYN physician in Madison for the past 6 years, and I just can't emphasize how important it is that my relationship with my patients actually be grounded in trust. And that's the trust that the decisions that we make together as a physician and a patient are actually grounded in science and my medical training and expertise, and it's actually what's best for them instead of what's mandated by the legislature. It's especially important when it comes to sensitive issues like reproductive health care. But unfortunately, in the last 6 years, my ability to do my job and to care for my patients and their needs, especially their reproductive health care needs, have been severely undermined by the Wisconsin legislature and the many policies that they've passed. They have decided that they know better than I and my 14 years of training and 6 years of practice for what's best for my patient in these situations. This intrusion into the physician-patient relationship is troubling because these politicians aren't trained in medicine. They haven't gone through the rigorous training and education and passing the tests and medical knowledge that is necessary to have these discussions with patients and to come to these really tough decisions that patients often have to come to. Most of these politicians that are involved in making these policies are actually indifferent when it comes to the advice of the medical community and what the actual evidence is surrounding some of these policies. It's not just an academic debate about this, like whether or not government should be involved in the physician-patient relationship. It really causes harm to actual physical patients. For example, when the 20-week abortion ban became legal, it was unanimously opposed by almost every established medical group. And I had the unfortunate experience to witness the consequence for one family that I care for. I had a family who had a beautiful 4-year-old daughter and was anxiously awaiting the birth of a second child and received the devastating news at their 20-week ultrasound that this very desired son would be born, if he was born, with a absolutely lethal skeletal dysplasia. What this means is that if he was carried to term, there is 0% chance that he would have survived. And in addition to that, the patient would have had to go on an unnecessary C-section for delivery because this child would not have been able to be born vaginally. So my patient had to make the devastating decision to terminate the pregnancy, knowing that if she continued, it would cause suffering for both her family and for this unborn child. And because of the 20-week ban, she had to go to Chicago to undergo this procedure, and she was not able to receive care from me, her trained OBGYN physician. As the story shows, when politicians use this agenda and not science and not evidence to dictate reproductive health care, it really does have an impact on patients and real families and real women. When a woman comes to my office and she's seeking reproductive health care, she should be able to trust that I'm giving her unbiased opinions, that my opinions and my advice is rooted in medical science and evidence, and that she doesn't have to worry about politicians inserting their agenda in my advice, and that I'm actually able to provide comprehensive care for her and for her family. Sadly, this isn't the case for many women in Wisconsin. And this is exactly why Wisconsin needs the Respect Women Act and why I'm excited to support it here today.
Hello, my name is Allison Blumenfeld, and I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. As a medical student, I go to school every day, and I work my hardest to learn as much as I can so that when I'm a physician, I can provide the best possible care to my patients. Whether in the anatomy lab learning brain anatomy, or in the clinic learning how to take a history and perform a physical exam, my education is based on the principles of medical science. When I become a physician, patients will come to me expecting that the care I provide is based on comprehensive medical training that is grounded in the most accurate, up-to-date science and clinical practice guidelines. In fact, it's safe to say that virtually everyone has this expectation of their healthcare provider. I know that I do, and that's the way it should be. However, after I complete my medical education and become a physician, when patients ask for comprehensive reproductive health care, the rules I will have to follow and the care that I provide won't just be based on the best practices I was taught during my training. I'm not investing my time, energy, and money to finish medical school and eventually complete an intensive residency training program only to be told how to do my job by people who have no relevant medical expertise. This is extremely disheartening to me. As a medical student, I'm driven by a duty to an oath I made to do what is best for my patients. These types of intrusions between physicians and their patients undermine that oath. These types of regulations don't just interfere with the physician-patient relationship. They also have a larger effect by making Wisconsin a less desirable place to live and work for physicians who wish to provide comprehensive women's health care. Wisconsin's already facing a significant shortage of OBGYNs, and this continued political interference in physicians' practice further undermines attempts to address this problem. I'm proud to say I've been a Wisconsin resident my whole life, and I hope to be able to practice here one day. However, politics that affect my ability to provide healthcare to women in the state discourage me from becoming an OBGYN here. Wisconsin is sending the wrong message to trainees like myself. We can and we must do better for women in our state. That's why as a future physician, I'm proud to support the Respect Women Act.
Ready for questions?
Oh, okay, awesome.
Any questions?
You guys have introduced similar legislation in the past. Any indication that this session's going to be different?
Well,
Absolutely.
we're eternally optimistic.
Yes. Well, here's the deal. We're going to keep introducing this legislation until hopefully someday it does become law. But more importantly, we're introducing this legislation to make sure that Wisconsinites understand exactly what's going on here at the Capitol when it comes to women's health care decisions. As a man, I don't have to worry about this because I've never seen a piece of legislation that comes between my doctor and me as a man. As a woman, Chris has seen it. I've voted against stuff that day after day, it seems, that there's legislation taking away a woman's ability to choose what's best for her and taking a doctor's ability away to say, as you heard, I've gone to school, I've done all this training, I've done my residency, all that stuff, I am a doctor, and oh, by the way, the legislature's told me to tell you this. As a man, it's really frustrating. I've got a daughter, and to have her grow up in a situation where rights are taken away from her through legislation, mostly driven by men, by the way, is very, very frustrating. So we will continue to introduce this legislation session after session until it becomes law, but to make sure that people understand exactly what's going on down here in Madison.
You know, and we hear from women all over the state. We hear from patients, and they want us to advocate for them. They're upset with what's going on, and we will not accept it. We will keep fighting it. We will keep standing up for women, and we will keep standing up for patients.
Anything else? Thanks.
Thank you.
For coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And listen, thanks. I hope you stay in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, yes.
My family.
Thanks. I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Amanda Ellen.